Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom documentation and tailor-made management systems so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Josh Alballero, and he is the founder of ioogo, which means to connect in Spanish, which I love that word. And he loves to connect businesses to simple accounting solutions. Right, Josh?
That is correct. Thank you for having me.
Yes, very happy to have you here. I'm excited about the topic we're going to be talking today. But before we get to it, I would like to give our listeners a little bit more of a background about you. So Josh is an entrepreneur. He founded multiple businesses and he exited one successfully. So he definitely has experience in that area. And he basically, his business, ioogo and Josh, they play in the accounting arena. And I love their tagline or their motto, which is basically making taxes and accounting ridiculously simple, that is exactly the reason why I'm so excited to have you on this podcast, Josh, because I would love to talk to you about how to make the accounting and taxes process ridiculously simple, especially from businesses that come out of tax season. It seems like there is always going to be some kind of a tax season, whether the actual tax season, their extension, getting ready for taxes. So whenever listeners are listening to this podcast, it is very applicable. So, Josh, did I miss anything about the introduction? Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
No, just a quick correction on the ioogo. The play is on Latin to connect. So we thought about the name and how do we want to pronounce this name? Let's get a catchy name, and we came up with ioogo. Latin play on Yugo actually. So that's thank you so much for the intro, and you did a wonderful job.
Thank you. Okay. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about making taxes and accounting simple, ridiculously simple for businesses.
Right. Yep. Well, so, being in this business for a little bit over 20 years, and the thought that we always knew that always comes to mind when we talk about tax and accounting is that only people like me can do it, right? And only people who went to school can do it. And that was the case back in the day, right? Even when I started, that was the case. But with technology and the just the growth of different technologies, and it's so it's becoming a lot simpler now. But we run into the first, and I think the main issue of things, right? That even if, and this is this could be a little funny or not, but even if technology makes accounting and taxes simple, nobody wants to think about tax and accounting, right? No entrepreneur wakes up and says, all right, I'm going to do my taxes, I'm going to do my accounting, I'm going to get my stuff organized. And I think that's that was the first thing that we wanted to tackle, right? And as a company, is the idea that this is has to be that this is complicated for everyone. And I think that's been a key to our success. Is the ability to convey simple terms and the ability to help young entrepreneurs understand that accounting is very similar to laundry, right? The more you forget about it, the more you leave it to the side, right? The more daunting it becomes, right? So, and when you are a young entrepreneur, it's important, and how befitting this is, right? It's important when you are a young entrepreneur that you set the right systems in place at the beginning, right? And that's where we come in, right? Not only do we talk about software with, our customers, not only do we talk about technology, but we talk about behavior and how is it that 20 minutes today, every day can save you hours or months or, a bunch of penalties right down the road. So I think that's been one of the greatest pieces of success. It's not just being an accountant to all of our customers, but also being a partner, right? And one that helps the entrepreneur grow in a way where if you lay out the foundation, if you lay out the systems now, then that ability to grow is going to be so much easier, so much better, as the business, gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right?
Absolutely. No, and I like what you said in terms of the analogy to laundry. So not only would it accumulate, it also, even if you do your laundry, it has a tendency to happen every week for some reason, right? I mean, it will appear again and again and again. Yeah. So the same thing with taxes. So even if you filed correctly or you did all the actions correctly, this time it will happen again in a year or every quarter you will have to do your quarterly. So whatever it is, it will happen over and over. So I think it's a great analogy. So now the reason why we're having this interview is because we want to help our listeners understand what type of systems can they implement or they can do, they can put in their organization right now in terms of making sure that they have a correct system for accounting and correct system for taxes, right? Because, for instance, we help companies document their different core processes. One of them is finance or accounting. And it's always great to have good systems so you can replicate it, so you can have transparency, for business continuity, risk mitigation, knowledge transfer, many, many reasons. So, Josh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So which systems do you feel? We're talking over each other. Let's cut this part.
I know.
Okay, good. You go ahead.
Go ahead. So I always like the idea of systems, and when it comes to something that you just said, and it's when you set up the right systems, the right accounting systems at the beginning of your business, right? Instead of 6 months after you're in business, then you'll see a profound effect on your business, in terms of the financials, right? What I always talk about, you got to take care of your three main pillars of the business, right? And one of those three main pillars is your financials, right? You can't grow your business without paying attention or documenting your financials, right? For many, many reasons, whether you're raising capital, whether you are, trying to obtain a loan or you're trying to make a proposals, you got to have all of this stuff documented. So what is a good system for documentation when you are just starting? And this is where most people will go, and the typical answer that I get is, that's it. Is that it? The simple process, the simple system of writing down your expenses, right? Because when you are starting out and you don't have a lot of expenses, you don't have a lot of revenue coming in, right? Start your system on a piece of paper, or much better, you can move to Excel, right? Or much better, here's the three options that I always tell people, right? Start with a piece of paper. It's simple, right? You'll see that it's simple math, right? What came in, what went out, what you have left. Use Excel. Or now technology comes in place and you really want to talk about simplifying your life, QuickBooks, right? You have QuickBooks, you'll spend $6 a month, and QuickBooks will download all the information from your bank, and all you have to do is approve and categorize certain things. Because let's face it, when you're first starting out, you need to know all your transactions. There's no need to go and hire a full-time accountant when you're first starting out. You got to know what, you're the only one who knows what you're spending the money on, and you got to understand where you're spending the money. And I always tell entrepreneurs, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. So It's important before you go and hire an accountant that you lay out the simple system of paper Excel or QuickBooks.
Absolutely. So that's for a startup. What are your suggestions in terms of having what system would you implement for a company that has already been in business for several years?
Yeah.
And, they've done that. I mean, they have QuickBooks. They might have a part-time bookkeeper that is doing it, but still they feel like they cannot be on top of their finances, right? They can't. The tax bill is always a surprise for them. They didn't plan ahead of time, so it's already too late to take the expenses for the previous year. There is no planning, etc. So what would you recommend in terms of a system for that kind of a business?
Yes, it's a really good question. So, the progression of, and I'm going to answer this question with this, right? The progression of a solopreneur to a startup to a large business, right? When you first start your business, you are the accountant, right? The business grows and then you need to get some help, right? And then that help, you mentioned it, a part-time bookkeeper, right? And then it gets to a point, hopefully, right? We all want that, right? Where it gets to a point where you have to hand this off to someone, to a professional. And then here's the answer. When you're going to a professional, you need to make sure that your new system, your new accounting system, and I'm not talking about just software here. I'm talking about this system of categorization to tax filing. It's fully in place, right? And your accountant will do that. But I want to let everyone know, not every accountant is a tax planner, right? So when we're running around at the end of the year trying to save money and we're saying, hey, my accountant should have told me. No, not really, right? The accountant is not a tax strategist. The accountant is there to account for what you did, right? But not necessarily to say, hey, here's everything that you should have, done, right? And that is where it's important to, on a quarterly basis, have a meeting at a very minimum, a quarterly basis, have a meeting with an accountant, with your accountant, and, say, hey, are you in a position to strategize taxes for me, right? Because to your point, we don't want to, there's no point of talking about what we could have saved, right? Because it's too late. So on a quarterly basis, you start thinking about, okay, what can we look at, and how can we, tackle this tax bill? Because the one thing that, a lot of our clients, know this, right? We don't have a surprise tax bill for any client, right? Because if you systemize your accounting and your tax savings, then on a monthly or a quarterly basis, you are looking and you are discovering the potential issues and the potential surprises that you're going to see at the end of the year, right? So I think, in terms of systemizing this, right, technology does a really good job, but the one piece that technology can't do is take over or replace the experience of a good tax strategist, right? And I think that's something that I will leave, the audience with is, make sure that your accountant, your CPA, it's also in a position to do tax strategy, and you systemize that on a monthly or a quarterly basis so that there's no surprises at the end of the year.
Love it. That's exactly right. So that's part of your strategy, part of the systems that you set up. So you said accounting systems. I think we need to clarify some of the terminology. So we talked about, you have the bookkeeping, you have the actual accounting. As you said, it's accounting to what already happened, right? So that's money that you already spent. That's bills you already gotten, or that's invoices that you already issued. So that's your accounting system. That's basically putting your transactions into QuickBooks or having your bookkeeper do that. Then from there, you can forecast the future, but you need those numbers, as you said, in order to do that. And in order to look at the entire picture, that should be part of your systems. And I think that is something that is missing. I'm sure Joshua would agree to that, is that people have the systems on how to account for the money, but they are missing adding to the system, having somebody, like you said, an expert look at it and strategize. Because that, if you have that as part of your process, you shouldn't have any surprise bills, because part of your process should be to set money aside for taxes. I mean, that would be part of the strategy, right? So, and
correct.
Definitely.
So the one thing that we do here at ioogo, right? And, software allows us to spend the time strategizing. So software, does a wonderful job now categorizing transactions, and then the accounting can do what the software will never be able to do. And it's to set the strategy of, it's the last quarter of the year, right? So we don't need to wait to the first quarter of the next year to know what your tax is going to look like, right? We can estimate now, right? Especially with companies of the size that you are mentioning, companies who have a history, right? Then we can, do a historical, or we can forecast, and see, what your last quarter looks like in terms of billings, in terms of accounts receivables, right? And we can look and see what the potential tax bill will look like, right? Now, the idea of paying taxes on a quarterly basis, for a mid-sized company, or a company, with a steady stream of revenue, it's a really good idea. Because if you want to if you want to kill that monster at the end of the year, then you start setting things up on a monthly or a quarterly basis.
Absolutely. And I'd like to now talk about your business, and how I'm really impressed how you systematize your own business and how you use technology in order to be able to deliver better to your clients, right? Because you mentioned in terms of the consulting versus the technology, right? I mean, technology alone cannot do the things that we do, right? It's not going to replace the accountants. It's not going to replace the consultants. What it is going to do, it's going to speed things up, and it's going to really leave room to improve in terms of the intellectual ability to resolve problems. And you are a great example of that, because you develop that software that helps you service your clients better, but you still have to be there making the decisions. So let's talk about that from the viewpoint of inspiring our listeners. If they're thinking, how can I increase the efficiency in my business? Tell us, what was your thought process and how you actually did that, and how you are helping your clients better as a result of having it?
It's good question.
It's a complex question. I understand a lot of moving parts there.
It's a thought. I remember a movie, a James Bond movie, one of the latest ones, where technology has now taken over, and they're no longer using the funny gadgets that we all came to know James Bond for. And one of the questions was, when do you know how to pull the trigger, right? And that's where the human still needs to be there, right? And that's very similar to tax and accounting, right? You got to know when to pull that trigger. And that's what technology is not going to, it's not equipped to do yet. But the one thing that technology has, especially in our side of the world, in our industry, right? It's that, for the longest time as accountants, we looked at technology as the evil thing, right? Because, oh my God, technology is going to come and replace me, right? They're not going to need me anymore, right? And then we quickly realized that wasn't the case, right? But what we have done is, we have taken the day-to-day, coding and transaction processing out of the way from accountants, because the accountant, the CPA, the accountant, the tax strategy does not go to school for that, right? They need to be your strategist, your guidance, right? And the customer, at the end of the day, our customers, what they want, what they love, what they need is guidance, right? Tax guidance, accounting guidance, forecasting, thinking about the future. That's what they need. So technology allows us to cut out 80%, our software, 80% of the manual work. Systemizing that process for us is super important for us to be able to deliver quality face-to-face attention to our customer, right? And when I mean face-to-face, is now via Zoom, of course, but it's important for us to be able to, when you talk about systems, right, that, we've spent, a lot of our yearly budget in making sure that our accountants are not there pushing buttons for things that could be already systemized, right? And at the end of the day, the accounting is reviewing for errors, reviewing for opportunities, and presenting those opportunities for the customers. And I think that's where we have been able to win in a lot of cases, in comparison to our competitors. It's because we're able to marry both technology and traditional services. But, making sure that we have a process all the way from the onboarding of the customer to how those calls are made and scheduled, right? To be able to determine when do I call a customer is not a light decision when you're trying to have a good customer experience, a great customer experience, but you're also trying to take care of your margins, right? So technology allows us to do that, right? Is this a time, to call a customer? Well, there's several situations that we have systemized already to know if we need to reach out to a customer or this just needs to be an email, right? So several things that we have done in the company. I think, we're very proud of the fact that over the past few years, we have invested a lot of money to ensuring not only that we are systemizing every part of the process of accounting all the way to tax, but that we're also documenting a lot of it, because, who knows, right? Then if we need to go to the next, level and start partnering with other companies, right? The process of developing a tool like this, it's important to have, and written, right? So, we've done a lot to make sure that the systems that are in place are there to help us support the customer in an efficient way.
I love it. I mean, it's perfect. I mean, so just to summarize, the key points that from listening to you is, A, you really understood your internal processes. Then you saw which one you can automate and which one definitely need the human touch and the intelligence and the intellectual and the customer facing relationships. So, but by automating those what can be automated, it allowed you to give better customer service because now you can have the attention on strategizing or talking to the customer or giving them that service. Whereas before it would have been just pushing buttons, which is really not what you need to do as accountant, right? So
right.
By creating a system that works for you because you develop your own system, you were able to basically grow and scale your business and create a successful company, which I'm sure it can also be shown your customers or your clients definitely experience that because they can have the attention that they need and also get accurate results, because that's very important in accounting as well, that the results are accurate. Absolutely. Right? So there are some things that are prone to human error, and that's where we have to put technology in so we don't have that human error. But on the other hand, we do have that attention and that personal interaction. I love that. That's really good. Yeah. So Josh, tell us, why do companies hire you? What do companies hire you for?
To simplify the process of accounting. Most companies come in tired of filing extensions or tired of errors, and it's simply for two reasons, right? If you're hearing that let's file an extension, it's simply your accountant or CPA doesn't have the right automation in place, right? Simple as that, right? And there's very little technology being used, and as a human, you get overwhelmed. Errors typically happen because technology it's running alone and no one's checking technology, and that's what we're seeing over the past few years, right? So we are hired to simplify the process, and that is what we strive to do every single day. No business, including us, we can't do it without automation, without technology. And I think that the customer, you said it better, right? The customer, gets the best of both worlds by us, having the process already figured out, when do we use automation? When do we use the human?
Absolutely. That's great. So that's really simplifying. So now it really makes it clear why you basically make taxes and accounting ridiculously simple, because you use tools and you also have the experience, and you combine those two, so you get this amazing product. So that's great. So if people right now listening to us and they want to contact you, what's the best contact? How they can best contact you?
So the website, the company, right? It's the website is the best website, the best way. ioogo.com, ioogo.com. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram and on LinkedIn, Josh Alballero. I'm blessed to have a very complicated last name. So Alballero, Alballero. And I'm going to be the only one who pops up so far. So you can contact me there.
Excellent. So definitely check Josh Alballero on LinkedIn, and also go to the ioogo website. Great website with a lot of information. And Josh, thank you so much for being a guest here on the podcast today and sharing your experience and your knowledge in terms of systematizing your accounting system. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Great.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.